So without further ado, I'd like to reintroduce our speakers tonight. So again, Courtney Moran is going to kick things off, tell us a little bit about Oregon hemp law, and then we'll invite Roger Lothamer from Capital Seed to talk about cultivation and breeding. And then we'll have Todd Delato take the stage from Can Research with his presentation, Hemp Seed for Personal and Planetary Health. And then we'll round our bases with Dave Sieber tonight of Hemp Shield. He'll tell us a little bit about the OSU course on hemp, fiber alternatives, and a little bit about his activist work. So Courtney, please take the stage, and everyone, again, please warm welcome. She's driven all the way down from Portland for us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Erica, Bethany, thank you both so much for coordinating this and for inviting me down tonight. It's really wonderful to speak to you, especially during 2016. This is such an incredible year for Oregon. We have over 73 registered farms throughout the state this year, which is an exponential growth from last year when we only had 9 farmers cultivating throughout the state. So we are very excited, and I see several of you farmers out there, so thank you for everything that you're doing. So let's just back up a little. So federally, yes, industrial hemp is still classified as marijuana, a Schedule I controlled substance. However, in 2014, Congress enacted the Agricultural Act of 2014, or the Farm Bill, and in that contains Section 7606, which authorizes industrial hemp research in states that have already legalized some form of hemp cultivation by institutions of higher education or state departments of agriculture. And now that farm bill has really opened up the door for production across the United States. And since 2014, approximately 18 states have legalized some form of cultivation. So there are over 26 states that have legalized some form of industrial hemp cultivation. So we are more than halfway there. Now in Oregon, we did legalize industrial hemp cultivation back in 2009 with Senate Bill 676, which was sponsored by Senator Przansky. The Department of Agriculture did not implement the program until 2015 when we issued our first licenses. And as I mentioned, we only had 9 farmers growing last year. And several of those farmers and I realized that there were a lot of issues with the current legislation. So we joined together, we created the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, and we lobbied and passed House Bill 4060, which was sponsored by Representative Carl Wilson. And so that's the bill that you saw. And House Bill 4060, I do have a copy of it down here. It's really opened up the door for industrial hemp in Oregon. It removed acreage requirements. We put in place the ability for farmers to cultivate in any type of agricultural building as well as in fields. They can use any type of propagation methods. We put in mandatory testing for any products intended for human consumption, which I'm really excited about. We are the first state in the country to have mandatory testing laws, but this is going to ensure that our products are safe. We need to set the standard for every other industry, be responsible for what we're putting in our products, and know that when we're giving something to consumers that they're going to be safe consuming that product. Also significant with House Bill 4060 is that we moved away from a licensing structure and into a registration structure. And now while this is more formality and just in name, it really puts in place that industrial hemp is a traditional agricultural commodity. It should be regulated as such. Our hemp farmers should be treated just like every other farmer. Historically, where they were treated like every other farmer, it's only been these last 80 years of prohibition that we've been taught otherwise. But now we are getting back to that, and we're getting back to our roots. So many of you are probably wondering, how does industrial hemp coordinate with the medical marijuana program and the recreational markets here in Oregon? Well, they are completely separate, and a lot of that has to do with that THC concentration limit. So while scientifically it is a 1% threshold to intoxication that really determines the difference between the varieties of cannabis, within not only Oregon law but federal law and the Farm Bill, industrial hemp is defined as cannabis with a THC concentration of 0.3%. So that's where we're at right now. So any cannabis that's being grown in the state that's below 0.3% is industrial hemp. Anything above 0.3 is going to be considered marijuana, whether that's in the medical or the recreational markets. Now, industrial hemp cannot be sold in any medical dispensaries. It cannot be processed by any medical processors. They are completely separate programs. However, for the recreational market, you will be able to find industrial hemp products in the full retail dispensaries that will open up this fall. Any industrial hemp products will be packaged, labeled, and tested in compliance with the marijuana item standards so that there will be consistency across the board with any product that you are buying in a dispensary. And I will briefly touch on the cultivation issue, or the cross-pollination issue. So that was a question. Sure.
Retail stores, sorry. The hemp products that can go, you just said can be sold in the retail stores? Is that what you just said?
In the dispensary retail stores, is that what you're asking?
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so are they going to be part of the traceability structure, or can you just bring hemp products into those stores?
It's not part of the CTS tracking, but on the hemp side, we have our own reporting requirements for any transfers. So it is, tracked by the Department of Agriculture, but it's not through the seed to sale tracking.
Okay, thanks.
So briefly on the cross-pollination, in House Bill 4060, as I mentioned, we put in the ability for farmers to use greenhouses, hoop houses, other agricultural buildings, as well as using clones, cuttings, transplants for propagation. So that's really going to limit any risk for cross-pollination. We encourage responsible, friendly farming so that in sensitive areas, farmers are only planting feminized plants outside, sexing their plants before they take them, and put them in the fields. In Eastern Oregon and some other places, farmers are growing for seed, but we are encouraging responsible farming so that no cross-pollination occurs. If anyone has other questions, I'm happy to answer if you need any more specifics.
All right, let's open it up to Q&A. Kathy?
Yeah, I have a friend with 10 acres on a major highway that has been certified organic in the past, but he's on a major highway. Would he have to build or grow a windrow or something like that to shield the view from the highway?
No, he does not have to. That's not required under the industrial hemp law. It's a traditional agricultural product. I mean, depending on what he's growing for his own safety, he might want to, as people get confused with the plants sometimes, but it's not required.
Thank you, Courtney, for being here. What is the percentage of the Charlotte's Web, which is more of a CBD strain?
I don't know the specific percentage of that plant, but it's going to have a higher CBD percentage than THC, and that's truly what the scientific difference is between hemp and marijuana. Is scientifically a hemp plant will have a higher percentage of CBD within the plant than THC, and that's truly what determines intoxication in cannabis.
Hi, Courtney. Thanks for being here. Would you maybe describe a little bit more about what the hemp inclusion in the Farm Bill, the impacts that has on public institutions of education, and what public institutions of education have to go through in order to utilize that?
Sure. Okay, so in the Farm Bill, it authorized research by either state departments of agriculture or institutions of higher education. So any university or institution of higher education can engage in industrial hemp research pursuant to their state law. So if there are limitations within that state law, such as, we have the 0.3% here, they would have to comply with that. The university does still have to get a research permit from the DEA because it is still classified as a Schedule I drug. So despite the fact that we have, federal legislation in place, DEA still has some control over what is and is not happening.
Up in Canada, Andrea was saying that to do the inspections that you're talking about is pretty cost prohibitive. Is that going to be the same here? Like it's $90 an hour for somebody from the agricultural department to come and do the inspection, and there was quite some cost to that. What's going to be involved with that?
Right, so that was the case last year. The department, I believe, charged $95 an hour for the inspection and traveling time, $350 per test. In House Bill 4060, we have provided for the private labs to do the testing, inspections, and sampling. So any lab that is going through the accreditation process will be able to go out to the lab. They'll contract with the farmer. They can do the sampling and inspection and then just report the test results back to the lab or to the Department of Agriculture. So it's going to be a lot cheaper for the farmers. It depends what lab you're working with. Let's ask Bethany.
Other questions? Courtney, could you talk a little bit more about responsibility in farming hemp? I am picturing like these Mist-made systems sterilizing pollen as it drifts through the air, and I imagine indoor greenhouse hemp cultivation is not economically viable. Can you talk a little bit more about some examples of how the distance of how far the pollen can travel is being mediated?
Sure. Well, there's, depending on where you are is going to depend how far pollen can actually travel. It's believed that the pollen's actually only viable for about 72 hours, so it'd have to be that perfect window for when the pollen's traveling, first of all. Second, if you look up to Canada, they have certified seed program where you either have foundation registered or a certified seed crop. And so if you are trying to become a seed distributor or a seed breeder, you have to comply with these different regulations. And their maximum isolation distance between varieties of the registered seed or foundational seed is 5 kilometers, which is about 3.1 miles. So, if you are going to be growing for seed, we recommend that you create an isolation distance between any other farm. But the majority of the farmers are growing for, flower right now. They're growing females outdoor. There's only a few that are growing for seed and otherwise, and they're all, been very responsible to date. So
That's great to hear. Thank you. Any last questions for Courtney? All right.
I took the $800 class on Industrial Hemp from OSU Corvallis, taught by Andrea Hermans, and David Sieber helped put that class together, by the way. Thank you, David.
it's a fantastic class. You should all take it.
Is it still going on? I'm not sure. Is it still going on? And it's free for people over age 65, by the way.
Yeah, it's a
okay?
$25 registration fee if
Right.
you're 65 or older.
But my question is, do you think that industrial hemp farmers in this country are going to follow Andrea Herman in Canada's advice and use pedigreed seed, or are we going to use seed from some other countries that aren't so concerned about pedigreed? Could you explain what pedigreed seed is?
Well, sure. Pedigreed seed is basically a certified seed from a specific breeder, and they maintain those breeder rights even after you're cultivating. You usually can't save seeds unless they allow you to. It's just going to depend on what your state law. California has very specific laws about seed, plant breeder protection, et cetera. Oregon, we are allowed to retain our seed, so it's just going to depend what your state law is requiring.
All right. Well, big round of applause for Courtney. Thank you for laying such a strong foundation for us tonight.